good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching this. Welcome back to Strange Trek, where we discuss the crazy and weird things that occur in Star Trek. Of course, I'm your host, the unpopular back gamer, aka Dante, and always joined with me is my boy Patrick. Patrick, say hello, sir.
Hello, everyone. Did you say unpopular black gamer or unpopular bat gamer this time?
I'm pretty sure I said black, but I mean,
Okay, you got the L out? Okay.
I could have had a Freudian slip there. Unpopular black gamer.
I want the people to get it right. Get the name right.
I mean, especially since the conversation that we're about to have, we need to make sure that everybody knows that I am a black man in America, unfortunately.
I too am a black man in America. Why do they need to know that? What are we talking about? I thought this was the uniforms episode. That's what I researched.
We are talking about racism in Star Trek. Did you not get that memo?
Let me check my email.
What the hell ever. We are cracking jokes right now because when we get into this topic, it's probably going to be more difficult for us to crack said jokes.
We're
Uh,
gonna be trying there.
we're going to try. Oh, definitely. We're going to try. This is going to be a heavy-handed conversation in regards to this because when I came up with this topic, my whole point was to just talk about like a lot of the episodes in Star Trek that hits on racism, and I wanted to do it around the Juneteenth holiday. Granted, I know that we are a week behind on that, mainly because of my family issues that I had that put us a week behind. Uh, but it's still apt for us to talk about, see, as how we are in between Juneteenth and the 4th of July. So the main thing that we want to hit on today, um, as I was doing research for this, I was thinking about how there are people that say that newer Star Trek, aka Discovery, Strange New World, Star Trek Picard, so on, that newer Star Trek hits more on politics and bigotry and um, racism, and like it's pretty blatant with it, and it's like in your face in every episode that they're doing this. And you have those people that are like quote unquote Star Trek fans. I say quote unquote because I don't believe that they are true Star Trek fans if they don't understand this point. Um, they're quote unquote Star Trek fans because they felt like old Star Trek wasn't political, didn't speak on bigotry, and didn't speak on racism to the point where it was just like hitting you over the head with it. And after researching, yeah, they're they are absolutely wrong in this area. Patrick, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was gonna just note like it's an interesting perspective to even have where it's like back in the day I used to get my racial lessons subtly. Now that they're saying it directly, now I have an issue. Like I know we talked about this before the show that the goal's not to like unpack the mental gymnastics that
Mm-hmm.
racists go through, but it's just like they're still talking to you about racism, whether it's in your face or whether it was subtle. But it turns out you were wrong both ways. So
And they,
there you go.
the crazy thing is like, yeah, we're going to point out a number of episodes where it was like truly blatant and in your face, but even within other episodes that are just like don't that's not really the main topic, there is still instances of when they're talking about politics, they're talking about bigotry, they're talking about racism. Like it is Star Trek's brand. I don't understand that truly.
Yeah, it's the what infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Isn't that the saying?
Infinite diversities and infinite combinations. Crazy. It goes back to the whole mental gymnastics that racists and bigots use to obfuscate. what they're clearly seeing with their own two eyes and hearing with their own two ears. It's maddening, really.
Which, to your point, like we don't do a ton of gatekeeping here. Like if you disagree about whether Discovery was good as a show or something like that, or you loved Picard, or yeah,
Yeah,
you're not going to get kept for that. I don't understand why the bigots don't just change the channel and watch
watch
whatever.
something else.
Yeah, whatever else doesn't put it in your face. Like what? It's them staying in the Star Trek
Yes,
fandom
yes.
to say all this stuff to us and kind of like ruin the good time of the regular Star Trek person that gets this and watches this. That is also like the mental gymnastics. And yeah, I know we're not unpacking it, but it's like, why don't you just go watch something else?
It's
I'm sure
it's
there's another space-based show out here that doesn't even approach racism. Maybe it's racist on its own. I don't
mhm.
know. Like, I don't watch it. So why are you watching the one that has all the equality in it and getting upset?
It's along the same lines as the racists and bigots that like whenever a new comic book character is created and that comic book character just happen to be black or brown or of some other descent other than Caucasian and white, that they get all up in arms saying like, well, like why do we need a new character about this? We probably need other characters. And it's just like also the characters that end up either being replaced by a black or brown person, not necessarily replaced, I should say,
Hmm.
wrong terminology. The uh, the the next person that carries the mantle of that name just so happens to be
Yeah, they're
black or
legacy
brown.
characters.
Yeah, a legacy
Hmm.
character, which I just learned that a lot of people who talk about that and use the term legacy characters, they have no idea what the hell legacy character mean. So that's that's part of my rabbit hole of this whole when I was trying to like research not only racism but also racism in Star Trek. I tried to get multiple avenues, just not like purely looking into Star Trek. I try to look at like other um, forms of media that also talk about racism. So that was funny how I went down that rabbit hole this week.
And before anyone gets started, I can attest, and maybe you won't believe me either, but the unpopular black gamer has tried to be very fair in this
I have.
and has tried to be very even-handed, whereas I would not. So you wouldn't get that out of me, but he's definitely been trying to understand the other side, be balanced in the research and the episodes that he was thinking of. He took a big research lead this week, which was good because it
Hmm.
covered me pretty good for stuff going on this week. So before you like hop in the comments, just understand that like he really went to go prove the premise that newer Star Trek is more woke or whatever it is that you want to call it, and the older stuff is more subtle, and it's just
Hmm.
not there. I knew it wasn't going to be there, so I was never going to do that research anyway. But he went for it.
Well, and I'll tell you the reasoning why, just to like give a good understanding for even the people that's just like, why the hell did you even do that? Of course, that was the
The people
case.
like me,
Yeah,
yeah.
my okay. Number one, I am the type of person where I truly like to see both sides of an argument before I draw really my own foregone conclusion. Not to say that I don't have arguments where I'm like one sided. I do. We all are like that. But truly, I truly try to take a step back and really pay attention to both sides and see, okay, even though this side I disagree with, do they have some type of validity there? Like, if there's something there that is just like, okay, I can understand why you would go this direction with this. Granted, you're probably not arguing your argument the best way, but I can see the direction that you're trying to go. And so when I did my research into this particular episode, I thought about how I felt like now about Discovery versus before I watched the fifth season. Like, because before the fifth season, I was like, I don't understand why people hate this show. This show is actually pretty good. It actually has like a good premise to it. good direction and all that stuff. And then watching the fifth season and then rewatching older Star Trek as well, I started to see those people that, at least the people that say that Discovery is not as good as older Star Trek. And I see that reasoning now. Now those that are just like bigoted and racist is just like don't like Discovery because Burnham is black and she seems like she's a Mary Sue and all that. That is stupid. I don't agree with that. So
Yeah, yeah. And if you think Burnham is a Mary Sue, you need to check your unconscious bias at a minimum, and check your bigotry outright, because or check the definition of a Mary
I
Sue,
was just
and
about to
then
say
look at.
that. Or on top of that, look up the term Mary Sue and what's the definition of that. I did rewatch it and really objectively look at it to see if that person really is a Mary Sue or not.
Yeah, there's a certain character in the other Star series that everyone loves. That is, by definition, a Mary Sue, and y'all don't have any problem with him. So,
Ooh, is that? Oh, you talking about in Star Trek?
no, the other Star series. Are we saying that
Oh,
series, or
oh,
I can't remember?
oh, oh, the other Star series, yeah.
Star Battle, something like that. Star Scuffle.
We are both. By the way, don't add us. We are fans of Star Wars. Okay. I have.
Very much so.
I don't know how many lightsabers in my room hung up. So
Yeah, yeah, I got two of my own, but that doesn't change the fact that Luke Skywalker is a Mary Sue, and will always be a Mary Sue. And I'm sorry.
But but Patrick, a Mary Sue is a female character that knows.
I want to hear it. I
Well,
don't want to hear it. That man left a dirt sand planet, having not flown anything, and blew up the Death Star.
you're not wrong. Use the force, Luke.
Yeah, just use it, because you just learned about it like earlier, like a couple weeks ago.
Literally just learned about it. Barely tapping into it at this point. Barely. But we're obfuscated at this point. So let's get into it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. First, I'll be remiss to not start off this episode and not give definitions, so we can make sure that we are on the same page here. Because I don't want anyone to be like, "Well, that's not the definition of racism. I don't understand why you would even point that out." When obviously it is racism. So Webster's Dictionary. We can all agree that Webster Dictionary is the defining source when it comes to defining words. Racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or ant. I practiced this word earlier, and I think
What, antagonism?
I even then butchered it. Yeah, antagonism.
Oh,
For
gotcha.
for some reason in my head, antagonism looks differently.
Yeah, yeah.
It's weird.
Look, it happens.
But racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is minority or marginalized. There are different forms of racism on this. It can, and racism can also look uh, different in certain situations as well. Some of the biggest types of racism would be systemic racism, and that's defined as systemic racism refers to the ways in which racial inequality and inequity are embedded and perpetrated within a society, systems, and institutions. In simpler terms, it's about how the system itself can create and maintain racial injustice rather than just individual actions. Think of it as a set of rules and practices that, even if seemingly neutral on the surface, have disproportionately negative effects on certain racial groups. And this can be seen in like school systems where you have like within the city that you live in one side of town that's considered more of the higher net worth side of town where you have a lot of people that have a lot of money, and then when you go to the areas that have the least amount of money, how those schools are less funded than the schools that are in those higher net worth areas. And I know people will say, like, well, I mean, yeah, because those people that's in that high net worth area are contributing more in taxes. Nine times, oh, well, I wouldn't say nine times. I'm going back into my economic background here. 6 times out of 10, I would say, they hoard or they use systems within that particular area that allow that money to only be
Mm-hmm.
funneled into their school systems within that area where it's supposed to be equally spread out through the whole city. So,
Yeah, and
uh huh.
do you mind if I?
No, go ahead.
And that's where you get a lot of county government, town splits,
Mm-hmm.
city splits. Like where we're from, it's a metro government, so it ended up all being one thing, and that's probably like played a big role in our lives that we don't talk in our friend group about a lot. But like
Yeah.
definitely, if you can get the rich tax base on like a county government and then leave the city government on its own, you can get a very different results, and that's
Mm-hmm.
a result um, of that racism, of
And
that white flight. Like a lot of towns in America, a lot of cities in America are defined by white flight, and their
mm-hmm.
government structures are set up for that to make sure that okay, the wealth is out here, the poverty's in here, this is where all the minorities are, and then out here is where all the white people are, and then we
Mm-hmm.
just keep it all separate, and it's depressing.
It's really depressing, but you see these types of systems set up throughout all of America, and it's like it's easy for us to say. Excuse me, I should say because we're black and we are largely affected by these systems that have been put into place. It's easier for us to see it and to say, yeah, these systems negatively impact us relative to the people that's not within that particular environment and don't fully see it. Now, there are
Hmm.
people that they may not grew up in their environment, but they did learn that these systems are in place. Those people are definitely blatant racists, bigots. They use well, I should say the people that have that knowledge and still use it to continue
Yeah.
that
Okay.
particular system. I should say, excuse me. So those that continue to like, they know what's going on. They see this. They get the wink winks from their other people. It's just like, we put this in place for this particular reason, and still use it and don't really like try to find a way to break that down to where it's fair across the board. They decide to just like, no, I'm going to continue to keep the system in place because it's positively affecting me and my people relative
Yeah.
to
But
helping those others.
there's a. Oh, sorry, I cut you off
No,
there.
no, you go.
got got excited because I mean it's one of the few highlights here. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, especially around like the George Floyd protests, like a lot of white people and people in general, like started looking this stuff up and started reading about it, and it like activated
Yeah.
a number of people as well to be like, okay, that's messed up. Let's work to change this because this is correct. The
Mm-hmm.
legacy of these racist decisions made back in the 19th century and in mid-century, mid 20th century are still going on today, and we got to break that chain.
Mm-hmm.
And I applaud those people. I know a few of those people who like read 1619 Project and White Fragility and things like that, and they came out talking to me about race much
Yeah.
differently than I knew them to be
Yeah.
talking about race before.
I would say that that period of time was pretty eye opening to a lot, and I had a lot of my friends who are not black contact me because they knew that I was the type of person. I don't like to judge people. I don't like to uh, just be like, oh, because you are this color, you are like this. No, I judge people on their own merits, and I have a lot of good friends that are outside of the black race. And like you said, they came to me and asked me about some of this stuff, like, help me to understand this. And a lot of times, I predicated that with just you won't be able to fully understand because you're not black, and I'm not. That's not necessarily me like bringing you down on that. It's just that you're not because you're not black. You won't completely get the understanding of that, the level of how hurtful these systems are. But I can explain it to you in a way that make you understand. And of course explained it to them and everything. And a lot of them understood it. Some like had other questions in regards to it, but like largely after everything was said and done, they were just like, you know what, I feel like I understand you more now. And not only that, I understand uh, a lot of the craziness that happens that I'm just blind to because I'm not. It's not blatantly in my
Mm-hmm.
face.
Yep. And those are the kind of people that would watch an episode of Star Trek and get the lesson that at
Mm-hmm.
least Star Trek was trying to tell. I don't think Star Trek has like even totally hit on like systemic racism like we're talking about now, which is the current most modern form of it that we have to work against. Um, but they'll watch it, take the message, and be like, you know what, I need to improve. It's still the people that keep watching
Exactly.
Star Trek and don't improve that are just like, what are you
Exactly.
getting out of this? This is this is not. They didn't intend this for you. Gene Roddenberry and writers and all that stuff are trying to get you not to be how you are, but you here hating, and you're staying here. You're not leaving. It's
Was it
yeah,
wasn't that one of the like main things that Gene said that he was doing with this show? Is to show a future where uh, all races, not only just on Earth but outside of Earth, can collectively come together to make a much better community than what we currently have.
yeah, yeah. I couldn't find the direct quote on it, but like when you Google it, Gemini just brings up like article after article when people are like, yes, Gene Roddenberry was definitely trying to do this. And I'm sure if I had extra time to do some research, I could find a quote that's like directly on point. But no doubt about it, Uhura being there and Uhura staying on the show because of Martin Luther King, even when she was
Yeah,
thinking about leaving, is a whole story. And
uh,
then
Sulu.
Sulu,
Sulu, that being
and
around the time of like the Cold War and how big everything was about. Um, well, not Sulu, but Chekhov. Excuse me.
Chekhov.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was about. Yeah, that's the one I was going to next. Yeah.
um, like that. We were strongly distrusting of Russians at around that time. So to have like him, granted, he wasn't in the first season. He was in the second season, if I remember correctly. Second season and on.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
he shows up later. We'll find out
yeah, and then
during our
even
TOS watch, in which I will need an IV of alcohol directly into my veins. But yeah,
and then
not to
even
be prejudiced,
Sulu
but
of having a Asian person on the bridge, and what occurred during the World War II, and how there are
mm-hmm.
some people that were distrusting of Asian people. Granted, I believe at around this time things were starting to get better. This was the '60s, so like that there is that middle area there. I know the '70s things really got better, but the '60s were like in that area where there was still mistrust from those that are of Asian descent. So
Yeah, and that's where some people. I'm sorry, I don't know where you're going with
no,
that,
no, go
but
ahead.
um, that's where I think some people really struggle with racism today. Is that you can get broad agreement on the hood wearing,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
marching up and down, goose up, stepping up and down the street, cross burning type racist is bad.
Yeah,
When you start getting into what we were talking about a minute ago, systemic racism, and it's systems that impact economics, and it starts looking like transfer payments from one community to another community, then you start running into stuff that I think people who like, if we just and I'm all right. Here comes the soapbox. If we just had like a more wealth equal society, that probably wouldn't have a problem with some of these things getting fixed. But
Mm-hmm.
in today's society, where like most Americans are struggling to get by and can't live comfortably on their salaries, like it's impossible to have a systemic racism conversation,
It is.
because there's just a lot of people who would be open to it who aren't open to it because it's like, well, you're just going to take money out of my pocket and give it to this community. I ain't
Yes.
going along with that. Um, so,
And that's
and
where
that's
you
about
have
as far as my empathy goes.
and that's where you have the situations where you have people that vote against their own interests. It's
Yeah.
this would clearly help out a lot of people, and only probably help you out just like a tidbit, but not to the level that you want to be helped. So you don't vote for that. You vote for the other person that is saying that a lot of their policies may largely benefit you, even though a lot of their policies also will largely harm you and hurt you. But we're not talking about politics in Star Trek. We're talking about racism in Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's. I think it's
And it,
important to note the migration of the racism conversation in America because we're in a moment right now where I'm like,
mm-hmm.
if we just, all right, the good old socialist soapbox coming out. If everyone just had healthcare, we could have much more evolved race conversations. Like even if we just had that part. So yes, I'm not trying to get like candidate political or school of thought or left. I think everyone knows from other chats where I sit on this stuff. But like
Mm-hmm.
if we were gonna have, and I know this is off agenda, if modern Star Trek were going to have like really impactful episodes about racism,
Mm-hmm.
it would be about like how the systems are structured, where, well, they can't tackle wealth because they're post scarcity, but they do it in some ways with like other scarce resources to show where it would
Mm-hmm.
work. I think that's how the more evolved episodes that would be on the nose would be. And it goes to your point about what you found, where it's like, yeah, we don't really have episodes like that in Star Trek.
And I want to point this out before we get into the meat of the conversation. Uh,
What? We're not in the meat of the.
oh no, we're not in the meat of the conversation. This is still the appetizer. Uh,
What are we been doing?
yes,
I'm about to take to the streets. We're not even to the meat of the
yes, we're almost
episode.
30 minutes into this conversation, and we have not even touched on the meat. So, uh,
Pause.
pause. I just thought about it.
We'll
So
get to that episode in the future.
I
The
hope not. No.
LGBTQ plus episode. No, not that. Not like
Oh,
that.
oh,
I'll
not
say
that.
the
Oh, okay.
LGBTQ plus episode will be coming in the future.
We do have plans of like having an LGBTQ plus episode. So we do have plans on that later. But I would be remiss to point out when we did our research in newer Star Trek, I was only able to find two episodes that really touched on racism and or bigotry. Granted, you can also say, well, Star Trek Picard season one, that whole season was about bigotry because it was about how androids were being oppressed and dealing with the
Hmm.
systems that were put into place there. Like, yeah, but that wasn't just one episode. That was practically the whole season. So I could see where people would say, "Oh, that was blatant and hitting over the head." But then I'll be remiss to not point out Star Trek: The Next Generation, where they discussed a measure of a man on when Data was trying to. They had a trial about Data on whether he had the autonomy and the sentience to be able to not be Starfleet's property. So all Star Trek Star Trek Picard season one was doing was taking that particular episode and drawing it out through a full season. So it wasn't like, oh, old Star Trek didn't talk about this, but newer Star Trek hit you over the head with this. This episode clearly was all about bigotry and how One person was saying that Data is a machine. He is property of Starfleet, and I want him to be able to create more versions of him. And they even said in the episode pointing out slavery when Picard was trying to find a defense for Data. Like they even brought up slavery within this episode. I do not know how that could be more blatant.
Yeah, and what you pointed out, kind of, and I meant to say it when you said this a little while ago
Uh
about
huh.
Gene Roddenberry, but technically, because Star Trek's starting point is that society has evolved and moved beyond pretty much all forms of racism within the Federation, and I think we see it's held up, not held up in some ways, like, but like
Yeah.
that's the idea of the starting point.
Yeah.
And technically, every episode of Star Trek is about racism because racism is not supposed to be there. When it is there, it's like a big issue, right? So you could
Which is
you could
funny.
go through the whole, yeah, you could go through the whole catalog. Like what we tried to do was, I'm not sure if you pointed this out, but on like a weeks of research,
Mm-hmm.
try to get episodes that like specifically talked about bigotry and how to respond to it, how to evolve past it, and
Yes.
things like that, as opposed to like just being like, well, Star Trek starts with no racism in the Federation, so every episode is about it. Like we could make that case, but we're not doing it.
I mean, these episodes, well, I should say a lot of the episodes that we're going to point out, like, literally hit you over the head with it. Like, Measure of a
Mm-hmm.
Man, that whole episode, they hit you over the head with how essentially Data was he was being oppressed in this particular situation and didn't necessarily, wasn't necessarily given the rights of other people or officers or even crewmen, wouldn't given the same rights of them to be able to say, no, I don't want to be subjected to this particular experiment, or even have the right to even say, I resign from Starfleet. They were essentially saying that he was property of Starfleet and they could assign him or do whatever with him as they feel.
Yeah. Well, the JAG officer that Picard definitely had pre-relations with, and
Oh,
probably
100%.
relations
100%.
after. Yeah, she said what you have to just catch about what they're doing in this episode. She says, "Data is a toaster. He is the
Mm-hmm.
property of Starfleet." And they pick it at the end of the episode with Whoopi Goldberg's character Guinan, basically alluding to slavery. But like, people need to understand there are still cases on the books in slave states that talk about black people being property and the
Yeah.
property rights that you have in black people and how you can transfer that and can you take out money against
Yeah.
the black people that you own as property. And it's like that's where this case law thinking starts from, is that I remember talking to a colleague and he's like, I have a case that says directly on point what I need about this issue in property law. And I was like, great. He said, it's a slave case, though. And I was like, "Ee."
Ooh.
It's like, so this is a real thing when you talk about like someone's legal status being property.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that happened right here to our ancestors and is still on the books. That's still good law. It didn't get overruled. You can cite it and try to like talk to the judge about it, but like
Wow.
the actual property principles that they talked about are still the property rules and laws
Wow.
that we live by. It just happened to be a case about slaves. And so when she says Data is a toaster, it's like, oh, wow, okay, okay. We're
That
making
is,
real 19th century slave law here.
dude, that is enlightening. Wow. I did not know that. And thinking about it from my banking and economics background, what I do on a day to day basis, I think of like where we always have to like well, a client's trying to uh, apply for some type of loan for whatever, and a lot of times we always try to have some form of collateral to
Mm-hmm.
go with that loan just to cover our butts on it. So seeing that people could be used as collateral for a
Mm-hmm.
loan is crazy to me because
Yeah.
it's
Get you
always
repossessed by the bank.
yeah, that's exactly where I was going with Patrick. 'Cause it's
Sold off
like
at auction. Yeah.
no, normally it's like a home or paintings or even investment shares or whatnot. It's like those are used as collateral, and if they default on said loan, we can go after that collateral to sell it to make our money back. So in that particular case, it would be a person that you can use as
Mm-hmm.
collateral to pretty much take them and sell them to make said money back. That is nuts to me.
Yeah. And if you're sitting home thinking like, well, maybe they put up the whole families as collateral, and they can no. If your dad was collateral on a loan that got defaulted on, and you weren't,
Your dad's
your dad's
gone.
going to the bank. It's going to be sold somewhere
Wow.
else. So like, yeah. So like, when you declare something property, like black people were here for a long time, that is a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. I think we lose that in the conversation sometime. I honestly wish on Juneteenth, like, we take a moment as a nation to like be like, when you are declared property, this is what you are. Like
Yeah.
we were talking before the show about some certain politicians have been downplaying the impact of slavery
Mm-hmm.
on black people, and and what data would have been put into if that judge's ruling had stuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, being property is not a positive thing. It's your computer, it's your car, it's your refrigerator. Like, that's what black people
Items.
were.
Items
Yeah.
like things that you would just buy, like those are used as collateral. Heck, when you get a home loan, the home that you are buying is used as the collateral for this loan that you're getting. That's why when it's like a you've been evicted from your house when you like didn't make the payments to the mortgage, that's why you're kicked out because the bank now owns that home. You don't own it anymore. You're kicked out. The bank is going to sell this home for the maximum amount of value. Probably have an auction normally, 9 times out of 10, to get back that money that they lost from that loan. So to
Yeah.
apply that to people, human beings, living beings, is absurd and crazy to me.
Oh yeah. It's the stain on America's legacy that we all have to still work against, because that
Yeah.
happened, and it happened here, and some people don't want to let it go. Some people still want to celebrate it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's a mountain here in Georgia with some folks who defended it carved into it. Like, the more we cling to that, the worse it gets. And that's the interesting thing about, now that we're talking about it, I never really thought about the way the episode played out. So if the writers did this on purpose, then what was already a brilliant episode has gotten more brilliant.
More brilliant.
But
Yeah.
Guinan is the one that points out to Picard what's going on, because of course
Mm-hmm.
Picard is like born so far in the future that like he
Mm-hmm.
never would have like put together that someone being called property, especially an android, I guess, being called property that's made out of artificial means is, like, I could see how he would be mulling over, but like Guinan was, I guess, alive and possibly in America. Don't they put her
Yeah. Yeah.
back in like the 19th century?
They showed how far Guinan has lived in one of the other episodes. Uh, it was the episode where they thought like Data died,
Yeah,
protocol, and then when they went back to the past, Data. Well,
yeah,
Data ended up
times
going back
era.
to the
Yeah,
past. Yeah, time zero. And he met Guinan in around that period, so she would have the knowledge of
exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
slavery during during that time in the United States period.
Yeah, can you imagine? This is a side note. Can you imagine how tired you have to be as a black person, even an alien black person, to be like, this is the 24th century, and I'm still reminding these white people, don't declare things property. It is bad. Unless it's actually an inanimate object, it shouldn't be property. Or
Because
I guess
Guinan's
technically pets are property, but that's for their
technically they
protection.
are, but
Yeah.
Guinan's whole thought was like, okay, yes, it would be great if Commander Maddox was able to learn exactly how to create other datas and to be able to add them to every starship um, throughout the Federation, because you can see um, how good data was for the Enterprise. He There was a lot of situations where it just so happened like either the humans were not able to uh, be stay conscious, and Data was able to, because he don't have to breathe. He doesn't have the same level of.
It's always good to have someone with superpowers around.
It
We
is.
they established that.
It is. And so, like, I see Maddox's point of view with that, but Gardner was pointing out, okay, but what's to stop uh, this whole race of datas for being used for jobs that we don't want to do? The mining jobs, the cleaning jobs, uh, the real dirty jobs that really no
Yeah,
one wants to do in
the cotton
society.
picking. Oh wait,
Yeah. Um,
I'm sorry,
like,
that slipped out.
what's to stop them? And even Voyager touched on this. That's another episode where
I
the
just looked it
doctor.
up. I was about to add it to the list. Arthur. Yeah,
Yeah.
that.
I don't even know why I
Hmm.
didn't add it to the list. That's one of my favorite episodes of Voyager, where the doctor was
That is a good
trying to
episode of
have
Voyager, which you don't hear me
that
say
you actually
often.
remember.
Yeah.
And just to touch on that, like Popular Explorers, like I pointed out at the before we even start this stream that uh, Patrick is good at the original series knowledge, because he's actually watched more of those episodes in an older age than I have, and also remembers more than I do from when I watched it at a younger age. But I've also
Hmm.
rewatched Voyager, I don't know how many times in my older age, and he has it. So I have the knowledge on Voyager, he has the knowledge on the original series. And we were discussing some of the episodes that I put down, and he was like, I do not remember those episodes.
Not at all. It's just deleted. So the last time I rewatched Voyager, I think, and I remember, I I have a reason for why I remember this specific year. It was 2014. I was at my internship in Manhattan, and I didn't have cable television, which
Mm-hmm.
for those in Gen Z, that was actually important for
Oh,
brief bit of American history to have.
wildly important before Netflix became a thing.
Yeah. So I was like in NYC at like that cusp when I was like, and so it was the first like cord cutting exercise I ever had, and so I had
Mm-hmm.
Netflix, and it had all Star Trek on it. So I rewatched TNG, D Space Nine, and I think that was the summer where I fell out with Voyager, because that's the first time I watched it. I think I was about 30, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
or 31 or whatever. So like that was my last adult rewatch of it, and I was like, show's not one I'm going to be coming back to.
And honestly, I'd be remiss to even point out that even at my older age, Voyager, as a younger kid, was probably one of my favorite series over DS9, which is crazy to me now in my older age. But watching both series again in my older age and realizing how the character development was in DS9 versus Voyager, and even the premise of DS9 versus Voyager, and how they stuck to the premise, Voyager is an inferior series to DS9, and even that to TNG, really.
uh, exact same trajectory. When I saw it as a teenager, I was like, cool, Star Trek,
Mm-hmm.
fly around, fire phasers, discover stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when I was older, I was just like, this isn't hidden. And then I'll tell you what it was. And I know this is a complete side tangent and what's going to be a long episode already.
Mm-hmm.
But some point during that summer, I remember being like, man, it's weird that Voyager doesn't do like really anything important. When was this set? And then like it was like set during the Dominion War, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, they couldn't even rope that in. Like this thing is totally away from like the coolest part. It's the same thing problem I have with Star Trek Insurrection. the time that I looked up when that was actually set, and I was like, wait, we could have had a Star Trek TNG movie that was about the
About
Dominion
the
War.
Dominion War. Yeah.
That would have been amazing. Like, why didn't they do that?
And that's where a lot of fans have pointed that out, where you could have shoehorned certain critical times within the Federation that happened on another series that overlap with another, and either movies or series, I should say. So that was a huge miss for the movies in TNG to like focus on that when they wanted to focus on the Romulans for some crazy reason.
I would venture to say that in modern television,
Mm-hmm.
they would have found a way to make Voyager relevant to the Dominion War in some way. I don't think they would have been.
You think so?
I don't think they would have been Gamma Quadrant aliens. I don't. I think they would have been Delta Quadrant aliens, and they would have worked in opposite directions. Like Voyager would have run into the Dominion before.
Yeah, I see where
Like
you're
I think
going
they
at.
wanted to get to the Borg, so they made everything
Mm-hmm.
Delta Quadrant. But I'm like, I think you could have done both because the Borg didn't really do all that much on that show. But that's a conversation for another time.
That is, that's probably something we need to put down, like how Voyager um,
No, they're gonna say
could
we're stealing from Steve Shives. He's
what
already done that.
Voyager could be better. He's done that.
Oh no, he's never done that. No,
Okay,
he's. I cut you off. Man, I did what some of your family members do to me. I hate myself for it.
hilarious, hilarious. They did that to me Friday. We'll talk about that offline.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay. Hate that I couldn't be there for you to help out with it.
But yeah, Arthur did a good job of portraying like another race that I mean, and essentially, Arthur is a play on A Measure of a Man, because it's another
Mm-hmm.
court episode that talked about a non. Uh, I was about to say sentient, but like by definition, they both are sentient. A non-human type race was considered property and not necessarily a sentient being or race. And they don't have certain rights. And that's what occurred in Arthur when the doctor created a holographic novel that just so happened to center around the Voyager crew, but didn't exactly put them in the greatest of lights. And when they pointed this out finally to the doctor, he finally got it. He was like, "Yeah, I need to stop this particular novel from being published until I'm able to rewrite it in a better way." But
Yeah.
the publisher was just like, "Oh no, screw that. This is great." And published it anyway, and went along the lines that the doctor wasn't a sentient being that could really say to them whether they should publish that or not.
Yep. Yep.
So, pretty much another form of racism within Star Trek that hits you over the head with it the whole episode.
It doesn't miss. Those two episodes don't
They don't.
pull any punches.
And
Like in one episode, Whoopi Goldberg, if you look past the character she's playing and just see Whoopi Goldberg being like,
uh-huh.
this is slavery, right? It's like slavery, like black people version of slavery. And Picard being like, oh yeah, I should probably go argue that.
And the funny thing is, this was genius, by the way, of the Voyager writers, which you won't hear me say very often. Uh, Even more or less often than the Picard writers. Uh, I had to put that in there.
I got you.
They showed at the ending, because what they talked about during, not only during that episode but also during previous episodes, was how the Mark 1 emergency medical hologram was decommissioned, and they had a Mark 2 and a Mark 3 by that time. And what they did with all the Mark 1 programs was use them to dye dilithium, excuse me, my lithium,
Yeah,
dilithium,
mine dilithium.
mine dilithium on a certain planet where it was going to be hazardous for of the people, and they show when they pulled back the camera to show the whole area, it was a bunch of Mark Ones mining dilithium in this area, which was it like as a young, and I'm not saying like in the future me rewatching this, like as a young black boy watching this show and seeing that was eye opening because you could see that this, in my opinion, race of people were being oppressed because they're created for this particular other job and didn't really do that to the best of their ability. So they found another way of utilizing this race of people instead of like allowing them to grow and be
Yeah,
other parts.
and that's another thing I think people miss out on racism in America is that even if you didn't live through segregation, and of course, if you or lived through slavery and somehow are still alive, then you're like Highlander. But even if you weren't exposed to slavery, like we know it, it's passed down.
Mm-hmm.
The knowledge is passed down, and when we put our family trees together and we can't get past 1860 or 1850, like we know it, so like we can see it when it's happening.
Yeah.
So like yeah, I that is the most thing that I remember about that episode is them panning out and all the holograms doing all this mean labor. I'm like, okay, this ain't right. Like
Yeah.
it's like we need to take to the streets because this isn't right. And this is where the Federation, in some ways, has its own systemic racism in it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and even though it's kind of evolved, even though it's being evolved past racism, it's just like still that kind of like in group, out group kind of thing. It's just now it's like pushed out mainly to, well, this is going to be a controversial statement, so here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly to artificial organisms
Mm-hmm.
or people we don't like, like Ferengi and Klingons most of the time.
But it was, but Voyager did a great job of this, not only in this one episode, but throughout their series. They always show situations where the Doctor was seemingly oppressed. Like, for instance, like the Doctor was his main function from being online was that their chief medical officer died when they got thrusted into the Delta Quadrant. So it was going to mean that he was going to have to remain online longer than any medical hologram has ever been. And essentially, he was the chief medical officer on board, but
Mm-hmm.
was not um, was not added to the meetings within like season one and I believe part of season two, was not added to the briefings and everything when discussing certain missions that they were about to do, where a chief medical officer would have been there to be like, okay, these are the medical issues that could occur. Oh, y'all need to get inoculated before y'all go down to this planet because there's a certain radiation that we picked up, da 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 da. Or basic regulations of going on a planet that we don't know really much about. You have to get this particular inoculation, this inoculation, remain in contact during this time, da 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 da. He wasn't given that chance to even discuss um, these things with him being essentially the chief medical officer, and he pointed that out a number of times to the captain. And also, one of his other issues was that, oh yeah, I'm just like left online when there's seemingly nothing to do. Practically, like when I looked at it as like, oh, everybody's asleep, and there's really nothing for me to do at this point besides the time when an actual uh, 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 alive being that needs sleep would be asleep right now because I am just a
I hadn't thought
hologram.
about that. Yeah.
I'm
And
not
he can't
asleep.
leave
Yeah,
because he doesn't have the mobile emitter
he
yet.
didn't have the momentum yet. And he was just like, I want to be able to have the chance to be able to go offline and come back online at my discretion. So and Janeway was like, good point. I'll tell Balana to look into that so to give you that autonomy to be able to do that. Essentially, he went to sleep every time he was offline. That was essentially what that was, and then he can bring himself back online if there was like a emergency situation or something like that.
Yep.
So, but like there were countless times where the Doctor was used as this throughout the series, and those were some of my most favorite episodes of Voyager. Granted, I know you don't remember those, but
I remember one episode where his program was malfunctioning and he was like shrinking and no one seemed to care.
oh,
I
that
don't
was
remember what
funny.
the episode was about, but yeah, it was comic relief, but it's also like making your point where it's like, yeah, we'll get to, I think there was something else going on the ship and they literally like couldn't get to it, so it was a little bit
Yeah, they
less
had a lot of
of an
other
example of this.
issues, and this was
Yeah.
like the smallest issue that the smallest thing that they needed to fix for the engineering team. Yeah,
Yeah. But otherwise, yes. Uh, Brain's totally deleted. I guess I need to like do a Voyager rewatch at some point in the future. I just don't know when.
you really should. There was also another episode where is it not the Kazon? It was the it was the race of beings that used to always like their whole thing was about the hunt, like their whole
Oh, the
being was
Herosian.
the Herosian, yes, where the
Mm-hmm.
Herosian took over Voyager. It was a two-parter, and they used the holodecks.
Oh yeah, that was a cool episode. I remember
Real,
that.
probably one of the best episodes of Voyager, in my opinion, next to like Scorpion, um, and A Year of Hell. Actually, there was a lot
Yeah.
of. Now that I'm thinking about it, there was a lot of great episodes of Voyager.
Oh no, I
You really
remember the
need to
good ones.
rewatch
I remember the good ones. It's just all the other ones I have to fight through to get to them.
it.
It's like TOS. Like I've seen the greatest hits recently.
Yeah, yeah, but like memory dump the ones that were terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this particular episode, like at the end, as a as like a truce offering, the Voyager crew gave the Herodian a holographic matrix and taught them how they could integrate that into their systems to have um, pretty much uh, a never ending group of I won't say group of people, but it's like it's holograms, but like a never ending
Mm.
slew of
What would Guinan
things that
say?
they could hurt, that they can hunt. I'm trying to pick my words here. If you can't tell, I'm trying to pick the correct vernacular to really like point out what they were,
I
and
know,
it was holograms.
biologically is what you're trying to say. Yes.
Yeah, and then like later on, you showed the consequences of them doing that, which was a race of holograms that wanted to be sentient and wanted to live their own lives, but because they were thrusted into this situation where they were always being hunted, always being consistently killed off and looked at as like just property, they themselves had a form of bigotry towards their oppressors. So
Yep.
they wanted them essentially to die. I mean, if I'm using be unalived, I should say, with the whole YouTube thing, like they didn't want them to live. So by the end of that whole arc, they they tried to do to them what they were being done to them, which was hunt the Herosian.
Yep. Yep. No, that's another good example. Yeah, Voyager has more examples than I thought.
Yeah, now that I'm like truly like breaking this down, Voyager really
Because
had.
none of these episodes are on the list of episodes to talk
I know, and I'm sad that I missed these when I was doing my. Granted, like I only had a week to do something that was a
Yeah,
big topic.
if you guys are a little bit behind the scenes, we don't really have time to do this.
We both
So
have normal
we
jobs
knock it out when we can.
and lives and
Yeah.
spouses and parents and friends that we like need to do things for. Like for instance, yesterday I thought I was gonna have a lot of time to really like truly deep dive, which I did. I spent some time deep diving, but my mom had called me and said like, "Hey, my computer's not working. Can you come by and like check on this?" So I took time yesterday to go to our house and check on that computer and fix it. So just
Yeah, do you
things
know how
like this
insane it
occurs.
would be if you had said no to her? I have to prepare for a Star Trek.
Sorry, Mom. I have to prepare for a Star Trek podcast where it's talking about racism, and oh yeah, this is not the my main job. Like
Yeah,
she would definitely
we'd
understand
have
if it
to
was
like
like my job, but like this is just something I'm doing for fun.
this thing would have to make some money for us to be able to use that
Yes,
excuse
yes,
for sure.
yes. And now that we've touched on like situations that Star Trek blatantly showed racism. Granted, like it wasn't fully, it wasn't about like another human set of human beings. It was about other forms of life that people wouldn't consider sentient. I do want to touch on areas where Star Trek wasn't exactly great at what they were trying to portray about racism. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, and do you mind if I jump in with an assertion, or were you about to?
Oh, I was about to say, forgive me for this because Steve Shives dropped an episode focusing on how the original series didn't do a good job on certain racial topics. So I'll be remiss to not point that out. And a lot of times, me and Patrick are just like, darn it, Steve Shives like touched on something that we wanted to discuss during ours, but like he's a bigger podcaster. Plus, he also puts out these um, topics a month in advance. So we should have known that this was something that was going to occur. So it didn't fully derail us because he was like touching on just the original series, but also at the same time, it looks like we were piggybacking off of something that he was doing.
Well, and also it's the zeitgeist, right? Like
Yeah,
Juneteenth was happening to him
yeah,
at the same time it was happening to us. So like it never bothers me when we end up on the same topic as long as we have our own take and approach uh,
agreed,
to it. And then
agreed.
I think most of these months we haven't even been even remotely close on topic. I doubt he's talking uniforms next month. I don't know. I didn't see the thing. Um, but the
I'd be
point I wanted to
upset if he
bring up
was, but keep
that
going.
would be we might actually change it if that's
No, no, I think no, no. To be honest, I think he also already did an episode about this like probably a year or two ago, and I
Oh,
can't remember,
okay,
but I
okay.
believe he has already. But keep going.
Okay. So one thing I want to get your take on, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where this lives in the racism debate in America, but I do get the sense that like people feel like it's a purity test where like there are some people out there that try to do better and then they feel like if they can't get like over the line, then they're just going to be labeled a racist and so they just don't even
Mm-hmm.
try.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of like using this segment to kind of make the point where I'm like, just try. We will all
Yeah,
get there together. Like,
yeah.
but if you don't try, then I can't do anything with it. Like there's got to be something between like, okay, well, if you don't get it right all the time, then you're just a hood wearing proud boy out here, like, you know, running through this. Like, I do think that people who get frustrated with race relations do have a point there because there are well-intentioned folk that just don't know what they're doing, or they're going to try to do something and it doesn't come off right. And that's where I end up with these Star Trek episodes, where it's like, yeah, you tried to do something, probably should have found a way not to do it, but like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to throw the whole thing out at this point because you're trying at least. The people who don't try are the ones that I'm like, yeah.
That is
I
that
don't know
is
if you agree with that, but
No, no, I completely agree with that, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that brings me up to one of the other episodes that I looked into, which was Star Trek: The Next Generation's episode called "The Enemy." Happened season 3, episode 7, where Geordi LaForge was stranded on a planet and came across a Romulan officer who was also stranded on said planet, and they essentially had to get over their bigotries to work together in order to
mm-hmm.
escape said planet. So those bigger trees, and in this particular case, this would be more of a stronger version of what you were trying to point out, because basically, from what I'm getting from what you were trying to point out, was like people that are actually trying, but don't fully see what we see.
Hmm.
Is that what you're getting?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
so, and when you point that out, I'm thinking of like people, certain people that I've gotten real close that I work with at work that are not black, and that like truly want to fully understand and have had a more candid conversation with me because they know they can, because I'm like, I try to give that aura of I'm not going to bite your head off for discussing this topic. Like, I truly want to have an honest conversation about this topic. So I give that aura off to where they feel like they can have that conversation with me, and I'm probably not going to go to HR and be like, "Hey."
Yeah, it's
uh,
definitely that concept of psychological safety. If you're trying to ask questions, get better, things like that, there's got to be a safe space to do it, where you're not going to have consequences, even if you end up saying some wild stuff.
and
Like if it's in the name of
mhm,
getting better, it's like you need people around you that will like, yeah, this is the safe space. It's like sports, right? It's like throwing an interception in practice in the NFL. For those who
mhm.
don't know American football, I don't know how to translate that to anything else, but it's like you create the space for them to do that, and then when it's like really game time and stuff is on the line, they actually like know what to do. So that's the way I
Mhm.
tend to think about it.
And I look at it as well, like certain situations that have come up, and I look back to like just I am I am a Southern Baptist Christian believer. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I've studied a lot within that area. But I also, one of the main things that I love about the teachings of Jesus Christ is how, like, Jesus, he didn't like go to everybody and like bash the teachings of God like over everybody's head. One of his main things was, I'm not going to bash you with this. I'm going to allow you to come to me. And if you come to me asking questions, that gives me the ability to be able to teach you of what I feel or what I deem as being true. And after that, it's up to you to determine that for yourself of whether you deem that as being true and want to follow said teachings. So
Yeah.
that's what I do in these particular situations. Like, I'm not going to beat you over the head, being like, and make you feel uncomfortable at all times or whatnot. But if you come to me and you're just like, I truly want to know how you feel about this, that's when we're going to sit down and have a earnest conversation.
And what I also do in those situations, because not all black people are the same, there are going to
Mm-hmm.
be black people who listen to this and probably disagree with some of the stuff that we say and maybe say we should have said stuff stronger or something like
Yeah,
that. I always encourage people to be like, now you've talked to me, get more into it.
yeah.
Go talk to some other black people in your life.
Learn from
Go do some
others that are not
research.
me. Yeah,
Yeah. And you'll
yeah.
start to get it from there because I grew up in the suburbs, man. Like I'm not the only black experience out here. So you got to like get out there and learn it just like anything else. Just like how you'd want to learn anything else.
And that's one of the main things that's so great about Star Trek is that they try to convey that throughout a lot of their episodes, that there are other races that have different points of views and different feelings about situations or how their society would handle this particular situation over another society. But one of the best things about that is being able to learn that society and why they do these things and understand them to the point to where it's almost an acceptance thing. I use the Klingons as a good example of this. Back in the original series, there was a lot of hatred and bigotry there with the Klingons from the Federation, and the part of that deemed from the war that they had with the Klingons as well, and actually both
Hmm.
sides really had like this stern feeling of how the other side was. And it wasn't until they actually like sat down and fully got to understand and know each side and what they were thinking and how they feel as a society. It was like, oh no, they're actually pretty cool. Oh, you may
Yeah,
do things differently, yeah, just like anybody else, but for the most part, how you think and how you react is actually not too dissimilar from us. We just do it in a different way.
yeah, yeah. They do a lot of those episodes, and in TOS, from what I recall, there's one episode where like they're fighting each other on the ship, but like no one gets unalived, and they're like trying to figure out what was going on, and
Mm-hmm.
then in the end, they're like, "Oh, we need to come together to fight this." Much like the enemy, with except with Romulans. But like their commonalities is what's able to defeat that situation that's on the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that. I know we're probably going to get to Worf later, which is a great thing to say about this episode that's going to run really long. But we're probably going to get to Worf and Picard later. But Worf was the one for the Klingons that did that to me when I was watching it, because
Okay.
you watch Worf and you're just like, I didn't realize he was Orthodox, like, and maybe Orthodox because he didn't grow up in the Klingon household and he wanted to like make sure that he could integrate back in as he needed. It ended up being like, kind of a paragon Klingon as a result of it. When you think about how things panned out there,
They touched on that more
but
during the Cleon Civil War that they had during TNG. But keep going.
yeah, they no, you're right where I'm at. Like they dole it out a little bit because Guinan kind of calls him out on it, where it's like Worf doesn't laugh, and she's like, "I've heard Klingons give out belly laughs." And then there's that episode that Riker, like way early in the series, before you even get to know Worf that well, goes on a Klingon ship, and
Oh
you see different
yeah.
Klingons like acting in
Mm-hmm.
like Klingon courtship to a certain
Mm-hmm.
degree, and like
One
things like
Cleon
that.
woman really was feeling Riker. Is just like Riker's just like,
Hey,
I wonder
I
if
don't blame him.
did Riker
Look,
top that? Did Riker top that? I truly want to know.
Uh, my interpretation, just my interpretation,
Uh huh.
is I think that's pre-Beard Riker. I think
You're
pre-Beard
right.
Riker is scared.
So Bearded Riker had no would have no qualms with like going to her and being like,
Yeah,
"Hey, I'm meeting you later."
been through a few more things. Real deal first officer of the flagship of the Enterprise. Like,
That's
I'm gonna be able to
hilarious.
figure this out. Non-Beard Riker is like, hey, have I done enough cardio? Have I done enough weightlifting?
Do I want to be in the infirmary for a minute after
Do they
doing
have
this?
physical therapy on this ship
You
if I
know?
need it? So like he's thinking about too much stuff. Later Riker, yeah, but yeah, you get a sense of that, and then yeah, in the two-parter where Worf is the one that's like at the party with the pad trying to like get the
Mm-hmm.
battle plan or whatever he was
Mm-hmm.
doing together, the duty roster or whatever, and you see all the like the Klingons actually partying, and you're like, Klingons are. That was the one. You're right. It
And
solidified it for me. I'm like, they are way different than the one Klingon I have access to
and
all the time.
it wasn't just they were partying. They were partying with other members of other families that were opposed to their side.
Yeah,
That was the
like you
other
get,
crazy thing for me.
but you get the ethos about it. It's the war. It's the fight. It's the warrior race. It's like
Mm-hmm.
because I think Kern like says something like, "We're warriors in a great war. This is
Yeah,
not the time for whatever you're working on. Like we got to party because we may all get unalive tomorrow."
because
He
yeah,
didn't say
somebody,
unalive, but yeah,
some or all or a good majority of these people will not be here to be at a party like
yeah.
this.
Yeah, like they may all get on live tomorrow, but the point, but they're warriors at their heart, and it's like it makes them happy to be in a war, and it's like
Yeah,
you get it now because you see more personalities around it, and that's what it takes if you're from the outside of any community. If you're white looking into black or black looking into the Hispanic community, which is diverse across many countries and things
mm-hmm.
like that, like you got to get like in it to understand it. If you want to understand it to that level, you can't just go to like your one person that you know from that
and
community and be like, represent your whole people,
and
please.
I would be remiss to point this out, where I've had my level of, I guess you could say, bigotry. Not necessarily to the point of like I wanted to oppress people, but like just my ignorance in knowing
That would
uh,
be a heel turn for sure.
that would be definitely a heel turn. But just like my my level of knowing the different Hispanic communities and understanding that oh yeah, like Mexicans are not the same as Honduran. Honduran's not the same as Cuban. Cuban's not the same, so on
Hmm.
and so forth. And it took a time where I was a manager over a great number of Hispanic descent people that actually like taught me these things, and it's just like showed me like, yeah, if you call a Honduran Mexican, that is a huge issue, and they would be upset. It's like almost the same, going along the same lines of like calling a black person the N word. It's
Yeah.
it's truly a big deal that you don't want to mix up there. So it made me really step back when I had a Hispanic descent person under me to actually learn like okay like truly where do you descend from, and then if I didn't know that culture that well I would ask them like okay like what are some of the differences, what are like da 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 da, like just asking the question, like getting to fully understand their culture and his or her way of thinking as well. Because a lot of the and that's another thing too, like the way that we move, the way that we react, the way that we are within our lives comes back to culture, how we grew up, how those societies the society that we grew up in pretty much structured the way that we think and we act. So, in order to understand that on a better level, as to, oh, this is probably one of the reasons why you think that way, you have to understand that person on a fundamental level of like where they came from. And that
Yep.
a lot of times that correlates to why they think a certain way.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And we all got to work on it. We all got
We
our
do.
stuff. That's the thing that um, I mean, and gosh, I don't even want to say this online, but like, especially about like the Asian community, like,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
for the longest when I was young, it was all ascribed to like one country.
Yeah.
And so, like, I
Yes.
legit left kind of childhood, teenage years
Yes.
thinking all Asian people came from one particular country. And
Hmm.
then when I got to like college, and that wasn't the case, it was the exact same thing you were talking about. It was like, oh, I got to not assume people are from one country
Yeah.
just because they look a certain way. It's like, no, they're actually like from a bunch of different countries with their own cultures and their own point of view and things like that. So like, yeah, we all,
Chinese,
being,
Japanese, Vietnam,
yeah,
Cambodian, like all these other different type of countries that also correlate within that particular area. Like yeah, like I had a really good friend that was Cambodian back in elementary school that actually taught me that. With not
oh,
even
okay. So
thinking
you got
about
a little
that.
bit earlier.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got a little bit early only because I had that friend.
Yeah. And man, like, so I think I wish that was another thread in the conversation of racism in America, which is like, we all got our stuff to work on. Like, being in a minority group, being black doesn't shield you, make you the epitome of not
Hmm.
racist. I've heard some black folk make some racist comments.
Oh, one
Like,
hundred percent.
and this is not me handing, some of y'all out there that might listen to that and clip that and be like, well, we got another one of them admitting it. No, it's just me saying we all got our stuff to work on.
Need the full
There,
context.
yeah, clip the full context if you clip anything. I didn't give you an editing space to do that, so everyone will know a clip. It's a clip.
And we all have our inherent biases that we've just because we're ignorant in that particular area and we just don't fully understand. But the issue that I have is you have the knowledge, you actually see it, you actually understand it, but you still decide to stay within your bigotry, within your racist tones, uh, that don't help either either your side or the other side. That's the crazy thing. That is the crazy
Yeah,
thing. That's the mental thing to me is that you like your way of thinking doesn't help anyone truly
yeah,
unless you're just a I mean, I hate to say it, unless you're just a rich white person that controls just about everything.
Yeah, yeah. Jeff Bezos got married this weekend.
Oh,
Oh, why did I talk about? Oh, why did I say
that's
that?
interesting.
Where'd that come from? Anywho, not sure
But
why I
it's
felt
like,
like I needed to say that right then, but yeah, and I think that's what makes the Federation
and
different.
that's what I was going back to. You're right.
Okay, gotcha. I'll let you host.
No. If you got there before I did, like true enough, go ahead and wash that out.
Well, and I do think that's what makes the Federation different. Like I mentioned, like a bit of systemic racism in the Federation, but I think the Federation is an entity that wants to immediately grow beyond it, and like
Hmm.
its assumptions that it makes about cultures is thinking categorically without necessarily the prejudgment. And when they
Hmm.
learn something new, they update it
Hmm.
and start moving past it. So they never get like stuck and they're thinking about the Klingons or the Ferengi or anything like that. And I think that's what makes it different and less of like a systemic racism argument than just being
Hmm.
like, we're going to operate with what we know about how the normal distribution curve works for the people on this planet. But if we get new information, it's going to get updated, and we're not going to stick to it, defend it, and be like, no, these people have to be this way, and I'm going to be this way because they have to be this way because it supports my way of thinking and things like that. Like they don't get caught up in that, and that pushes the Federation beyond classic racism, which is a good thing to have on TV. And I don't understand how the racists watch Star Trek, knowing that that's what they do, like because
And
it's not what you do, like.
I'll use Captain Kirk as a good example of this. For a good chunk of his career, Captain Kirk had always been at odds with the Klingons, always, and he didn't really truly like them. And then when a Klingon killed his one and only son, it
Unalived.
yeah, I'm sorry, unalived. It's
We try to
sad.
talk like adults on YouTube.
I don't. It's sad that I can't talk like a human being on YouTube, but uh, the fact that a Klingon unalived one of his one and only son, I should say, um, even compounded his prejudice towards the Klingons,
Hmm.
which was why Star Trek Six: The Undiscovered Country was so impactful, so good at what it did. Once again, another, I want to say episode, but it's not an episode, it's a movie, a
It's a
two
movie.
hour length movie that talked
Yeah,
completely about bigotry, racism, and prejudices. Like
old
the
school Trek
whole
too.
movie.
Just going back to your premise.
Like, and once again, I don't understand how certain bigots and racists look at this as just like, yeah, they never really like truly talked about this. It never was just hitting over your head or whatnot. This whole movie was about this and how
Whole movie.
Captain Kirk had to overcome said prejudice in order to see that peace with the Klingons would actually be beneficial not only to the Federation but also to the Klingons themselves. And
Yep.
like him, like you seeing his character and how he was at the beginning, and the Cleon bastard killed my son. The Cleon bastard killed my son. Like him going through that grief of this being the only prodigy that he had and was unalived by a race of people that he didn't truly fully understand. Like it just compounded that, and he had to get over that and learn that there was more to the Klingons than his prejudice that he had towards them. And finally came to the conclusion that peace between both of these races would be very beneficial.
Yeah. And it mirrors our current conversation about immigration
Mm-hmm.
in the Latin community because, not to get political, but there's certain elements of one party that will bring up the one or two examples of crime that come out of this community that migrates or immigrates into the United States
Which
and
is
will use
maddening
that
to me.
grievance. Yeah. You use that. I mean, as a whole, if you don't know, that population commits less crime
Hmm.
than the population that's represented by the people that hate on that population. But
Hmm.
okay.
But that's also the
Um,
same. That's it's almost the same argument that they use towards us as well. They
yeah,
use
yeah,
towards
exactly.
black Americans that like were um, inherently confrontational and aggressive and commit the most crimes out of any race
Yeah,
within America. When you actually break down the numbers, uh, don't
the
support that.
vast majority of crime is committed by the race that's represented by the vast majority.
Yes.
So like, let's just go there.
They
But it's the
always
same thing because
I always love
hmm
this too. It's funny because it's like as an intellectual that went to not only college but also got a master's degree as well, and then to your same thing, you also have an undergraduate master's degree and a law degree. So like I always find this funny when people use numbers in a way that um, benefits their argument, where it's just like, oh, okay, that's crazy because when you actually like fully stretch out the numbers, this would completely destroy your argument. But only people, certain people only like latch on to that percentage. Like, okay, so black people have this many percentage of people that commit crimes relative to all other races, and it's just like, okay, let's break this down. The amount of black
yeah,
people
I know.
in America is this amount, and from that amount, this is the number that commit crimes. But then when you break out like white people, Hispanics, Asian people, like all that stuff, and like really like break down the numbers and like, oh, and this is within that group, this is how many that lives in America, and this is how many of them commit crimes. The one that's the majority in America creates commits the most crimes out of all the minority groups.
Yeah, I mean the way that it gets described by not all, but like certainly the bigots out there, like we're basically like the Legion of Doom. Like we're all
Yeah,
supervillains. Like we able to commit multiple
yeah,
crimes without being caught. Like it's just it's ridiculous. And so they use those grievances against immigrants in these one examples, just like how Kirk was using the one example to discriminate against the Klingons.
hmm,
But the movie's about not letting that happen. But so many people buy into that narrative here. And it's like, no, if you are a Star Trek watcher, then you shouldn't buy into that narrative because there was a whole movie about not doing that, even if it
yeah,
personally happened to you in the
yeah.
worst way possible. like, like that's what the movie was about. And it's like, they just miss it.
It goes back to that.
They just
It's
don't want
like
to see it.
I truly don't understand the mental gymnastics that these people have to uh, pretty much say like, oh yeah, well, Star Trek isn't political. Star Trek doesn't really like touch on racism and bigotry that much. It's like practically almost every episode does it. Hell, we pointed out the situation where there were either a full length movie that talked about it or a full season of it being talked about.
Exactly, exactly. Hey, do you think this is a good spot to take like a 5 minute bio break in the midst
Yeah,
of our insightful conversation?
yeah, I kind of need to use the a little boy's room as well. So
Okay, it'll also give you a chance to reset when we get back, because I'm fairly sure you wanted to start talking about when Star Trek doesn't get it right, and somehow we ended it
yes,
back over.
yes,
We ended
I
up back
was
over
getting
here
there, and
in a
which
good
was going to
way.
probably add another hour to what we're already discussing. So we're going to take a break right now. Unpopular Explorers. We'll be back hopefully within 5 to 10 minutes. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so we are back with the second part of this discussion about uh, racism within Star Trek. So we wanted to go in the direction of where Star Trek kind of missed the mark when discussing these topics. I would be remiss to not point out, like what I pointed out earlier, that there have been times where even me, as an enlightened person that understands there are different cultures that have different beliefs, different structures than my own, that I've missed the mark and had a particular stereotype towards them that members of that community had to pretty much check me on. And the checking was, I mean, they needed to. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, like, because my view of not knowing this particular society or community was pretty much skewed from what I seen on TV for at a certain point in time when the internet became a thing online. Like, so a lot of my imaginations of the society was skewed from what I
Mm-hmm.
seen there. So they had to show me, like, oh God, I don't know where you got this information from. So let me tell you that that's not right, and this is how it really is. Da 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 da. Same thing with how certain people have come to me about my particular community, because all they've been exposed to on that was just from what's seen on TV, news, etc. So
Maybe racists just hate learning and people that don't look like them, but
I
also learning.
so 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 me and my oldest brother had this particular conversation. I'm glad you brought this up. Me and my oldest
Okay.
brother had this conversation, and I said it was them being uneducated. And my brother pushed back on that and said to say that their whole side has never been educated is ignorant as well.
Ooh.
And it was, he actually had a really good point. Me and my oldest brother, we think alike in certain areas and we butt heads a lot. But we learned a lot from one another. We both learned this over our whole lives, that we learn a lot from one another. And him pointing it out to me was just like, ooh, I need to rethink this and look at this in a different way.
Yeah, he's
And
good
it's,
for that kind of stuff.
he is. He really is.
Hmm.
He even though there's sometimes where he, like, it's maddening. He pisses me off.
Well, of course, he's a sibling.
He's a
Yeah.
sibling. Yes, like anyone who has siblings understand this whole point. But he's
Sorry to
he's
my sibling if you hear this.
he's extremely intelligent and knows what he's talking about, and doesn't make points that he doesn't know information on. So him to point this out to me made me rethink this whole situation and just be like, okay, it's not that they are uneducated, because there are a group of within that group, there's a number of them that either graduated from high school, graduated from college, even graduated, had a master's degree, doctorate, became a lawyer, so on and so forth. So it's not like they're uneducated. The issue is they lack critical thinking within this area. That's the
I
issue.
agree. I agree, and some of it is motivated. There's a Upton Sinclair quote that I might mess up because I haven't seen it in a while, but
Mm-hmm.
it goes, if a man's salary depends on him not understanding a thing, then he won't understand it. And I think on
Ooh,
racial issues, there's so many things that are not just your salary, but like your survival, which is kind
yeah,
of the same thing nowadays. That I
yeah,
think a lot of people like equate their survival with their race being on top because there's people in their race that they
yeah,
think will take care of them. And it's just like, well, I'm just not going to understand this thing that challenges that because it's my survival, it's my salary, and like, yeah, I would agree with your eldest brother there. I'm trying not to accidentally dox him. I agree with
I
your oldest
appreciate that.
brother there that that's a very big thing.
Even on a deeper degree with that, There are people that will. I'm not. Let me reiterate.
We're
Anything
getting
talk
close.
anything talking about racism, you have to watch what you say because people could like misconstrue it and blow it out of proportion. Um, so I want to be careful with what I'm saying here. Even
I
within that,
understand.
within our own race, within the black community in America, there are
Oh yeah,
people
what I
that
said
we
earlier.
call Uncle Toms,
Hmm.
and those are people um, that are spiteful or hate who they are and decide to speak out on their own race because it benefits them either monetarily or socially. So they are willing to talk bad about their own race, their own culture, the uh, who they are essentially, just so they can get ahead and get either the money they need to survive or even get the social status that they need in order to
Hmm.
maintain what they're currently doing. And that's an area that has been misconstrued by other races of why we call these people Uncle Toms. It's just like, oh, you just hate how successful they are. No, they're going against their own race. They are essentially uh, going against their own interests because they feel like if they don't, then they will be excluded from X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and and to add to that, there's also folks. We promise we'll get to the topic of Star Trek getting it wrong
Oh
sometime
yeah, we
in a
will.
minute, but there's also people in our community who have internalized, and I'm going to make a bit of a controversial statement. I think this also happened to like some folks who like went through the civil rights movement like
Mm-hmm.
around like the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
internalized that white normativity, um, white supremacy to some level is right, and that's the like standard you live up
Mm-hmm.
to not look poor, to look
Mm-hmm.
classy, to look things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So like having your own culture and it be like hip hop or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
like is something that needs to be put down, and we need to put like the white normativity kind of up there, and that's just internalized racism
Yes.
coming out. And so like
Yes.
you can end up being an Uncle Tom just for like, and this is probably what the book was about. I probably need to read it. But you can be an Uncle Tom not just for your economic interest, but also because you've internalized that, oh, whiteness is right, and that's what
Yes.
we need to do
Yes.
here, and I need to fall in line with that, even though I have this black skin or other form of dark skin
Yes.
or differently
And
melanin skin.
you also see that in other races as well, not just within our black community, like for particularly from this past election that we had, how a
Hmm.
lot of the Latin community wanted to go that particular route because they felt like that community accepted them, and now they're seeing that that community didn't like them fully. They were just using them just to get the vote to get this one person into power that would uh, pretty much speak to what they wanted
Yeah,
and not
yeah,
necessarily what that community that voted for them wanted.
yeah. Accepting supremacy in any form is not going to get you where
Hmm.
you think you're going to go if you're not in
Hmm.
that community that's supreme. And it
Exactly.
doesn't matter how much you love it, how much you say you're going to love it, how much you promote it, things like that. It's not going to take you there. And we have notable examples from our community of, as we say, people trying to get back into the cookout
Hmm.
that ain't getting back in.
Black
It's
black
like,
magus, black
yeah,
magus.
yeah, like,
It's and that's why like I mean we make the joke as a black community of like, oh, you're invited to the cookout, oh, you're invited to the cookout. It's just basically us saying that, oh, you're outside of the black community and you're cool enough to be integrated within this community and to kick it with us. Is
yeah,
basically what we're saying. And now, like, after everything is said and done, everything that's happened over the past, what, 6, 7 months, we're just like, all invitations to the cookout have been suspended until further notice. Thank you.
until further notice. Until further notice. and some are under review.
A large number are under review right now.
Hmm. And some of y'all are trying to apply, and we ain't taking new applications.
Yes.
We
Yes.
we gotta figure this out with existing
Before we start this back
cookout
up.
attendance. Yeah, exactly.
But
So, yeah,
but like I said, like there have been times where I've missed the mark. And
yeah,
that's the thing that's like that I think that is crazy for those that are bigot and racist. A lot of them, I feel like a lot of them know that they're wrong, but they either don't
mm,
want to change, either because of like other circumstances within their life, like they're part around a community that is like stemmed in that, or they don't want to seem like they're wrong, and to be able to say, you know what, I was wrong in this. I apologize. I've been enlightened. Let me change my outlook. Relative to somebody like me, which will look at this and be like, "Oh crap, I was wrong in this area."
yeah, yeah,
And right, actually like verbally state that I was wrong. I looked at this differently. I need to educate myself. Let's look at where I was wrong, and please give me that knowledge if you're able to.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And to the point that you're driving us to, it's how Star Trek, the show, can make a misstep
Mm-hmm.
without losing its credibility of trying to make things better by putting out a anti-racist message pretty much
Mm-hmm.
any time it can, and by its very existence, even though things like code of honor
Yeah.
and things like that happen. So yeah,
And Patrick just pretty much pointed on to the episodes that one of the two episodes I should say that we're going to discuss now, where we feel that Star Trek missed the mark. One of them, Steve Shives has already discussed on his channel with his previous episode. So I would encourage you, if you haven't watched that, please do. It is great. A lot of stuff that Steve Shives puts out, I cannot disagree with. He is like bullseye on point, 100% for the most part.
yeah,
So like, that's very rare that I'm like, I don't agree with that, and like I can only think of really like two, maybe three episodes that he's done where I don't agree with that. But I'm not going to agree with everything that everyone puts out. But for the
yeah,
most
exactly.
part, he hits. He bullseye this particular one, and uh, it would be it would be erroneous enough for us to not point out the episode within Star Trek, the original series, "Let That Be Your Last Battlefield," that everyone and their mama who is a Star Trek fan knows about this episode. If you
Yeah,
are
we're
a
gonna.
fan, you know this episode.
Yeah, you know you've seen it. You might not have seen it in a while, but it's the face. It's the episode with the black face on one side, the white face on the other side, and then the
Mm-hmm.
dude's just reversed, but they're both exactly the same,
Mm-hmm.
and they
They come from the
hate
same.
each other.
They come from the same planet. They hate each other, all because of that difference.
Yeah, and you talk about Star Trek putting racism. It has a
Mm-hmm.
mixed legacy because you talk about Star Trek putting racism um, up front, and they were clearly doing this because this show ran in the '60s, and they're like,
That
see
was.
how ridiculous it is to make black-white relations
Mm-hmm.
the way
That was
that
my
it
other
is.
thing. Is just like, how could you not depict this as something that was talking about racism and bigotry? How? How?
It's like if they had the word woke back then and the way that we use it now, like this episode would have been woke
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would have. And I mean, a lot of stuff happens in the episode. And when we get to the TOS rewatch, we'll go through the plot points and the things we found to be
We will.
silly.
Yeah.
Um, Several points, these guys take over the ship, and it probably doesn't make any sense. But you can see it if you have watched Star Trek. Even if you're a racist that has watched Star Trek, you can see this episode in your mind. And one thing that the unpopular black gamer told me that because I hadn't seen the Steve Shives video watch is the same thing I felt is that The only thing it really stumbles on is that it doesn't resolve anything,
The
which
ending resolution is it it kind of misses the mark there. And
yeah,
like
they get to,
I understand exactly what they were trying to portray and what they were trying to do within this episode, but it was just like at the very end there was like no resolution to it.
yeah, these two guys hate each other because the opposite sides of their face are black and white,
Mm-hmm.
and they realize that their own people have, thanks YouTube, unalived each other,
Mm-hmm.
and let's call it a geocide of each
Mm-hmm.
other
Their
on
whole
their home
society
planet.
was wiped out because of the bigotry between the two races.
Yeah, which is a clear message to us. I don't know how you live in the United States and not understand that that is a message to you that we
Mm-hmm.
unify or we like it's part of our ethos as Americans to the extent that we all have an American thing. Like we unite, right? The United States. But anywho, I don't know how bigots miss this, except for what we talked about before. And they're just like, all right, bring them back down, and they can be the last two to fight each other. And everyone's kind of sad that that's the resolution on the ship, but then they just kind of fly away, like,
Yeah, they just fly away.
and
They're
we're on
like,
to Wednesday.
oh, okay, I guess that's it.
Yeah,
Oh, done and done. And then leave.
yeah. And I don't know if it's because obviously we weren't alive in the '60s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's because that's just how things were back then. That
It's a
like,
possibility.
yeah, like maybe that fit within that context, but definitely to like, you can only excuse that so much because you are fiction. So you can write an
Mm-hmm.
ending to this episode that has those two dudes do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially being like, especially when it's right there to be like, hey, you know, it's actually stupid that we do this, and we need to understand each other better and kind of show that path. Or maybe it was meant to be a tragedy the entire time. I don't know. Maybe when we get to the actual rewatch, we'll look at some of the writers' notes to
Yeah.
understand it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it just leaves racism open-ended question, and it's
I
like, oh, that's not what you want your fiction to do.
I will say when I was thinking about this and looking at this particular episode, and even when I watched Steve Shives' episode, like I did think that maybe that was possibly what the writers were trying to do in that area was like trying to leave it ambiguous and open to get people to think more, and just like to show like if we allow our bigotry to continue and don't like get to a point where we understand the other side and understand like their culture and how they are, it could lead to a point where we destroy everything, not only just them, but also ourselves as well. And
Even when it gets to the point of the illogical, where you're the last two of your
yes,
species, you're gonna find a way to destroy each other. So at least
yes, and that was
one
their
of your racially superior. So I don't understand.
and I think that was the whole point. It's just like they would much rather instead of because Kirk within that episode gave them the opportunity to come back to the Federation and integrate within the Federation as well, but they decided to not do that and want to continue their fight against one another to the point where they both beamed down to the planet and continued said fight, even while
Yeah,
their whole civilization was wiped out, which is like crazy to me. And one of the best
yeah,
things that Star Trek does is show how multiple races can come together and share things that other races may not know. Like we have this particular technology from the Vulcans, and we have this particular technology from the humans. We have this particular technology from the Andorians. We have this particular technology from the whatever Cleons on, and then like all that integrated to like be able to create this great federation, this federation of planets that allow like a lot of prosperity across all the planets, and which
yeah,
was Gene
yeah,
Roddenberry's vision, I should say, with this.
yeah, yeah. But it's a really good point that you're making because we're sitting here. You intentionally went out trying to understand the points of people being like, old Star Trek was
Mm-hmm.
not like this. Not
Mm-hmm.
saying that we're all saying that all those people are bigots, but like some of y'all are bigots, some of you are not. But like you couldn't quite get there, and I think maybe that is what they're trying to say is like, hey, you're not going to understand some of these people that are just going to harbor these beliefs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all you can do is drop them off on their own planet and just move on, which is what I do to a certain extent. Like, as long as you
That's
guys
probably
stay
a
over
good
there and
way
don't
of
hurt,
putting that for this particular episode.
yeah. So as long as y'all don't hurt anybody and just go away, like yeah, we'll just all get on the ship and we'll head out with our healthcare and education and oh, never mind. I'm sorry, I'm getting back on. Where's that soapbox coming from again? Take
Yeah,
that
yeah,
back.
yeah. Wrong episode. We'll talk about that later.
Wrong episode.
But it's I still felt like they could have resolved this particular episode by getting them to understand the sides, and I felt like that would have been more of a message. But also at the same time, I would be remiss to point out that a lot of these shows, a lot of these episodes, a lot of these writings is considered art. And a lot of times
hmm
art is going to, like, when you look at a painting, a lot of times some people will look at a painting and be like, oh, it's just a painting. It's I mean, I don't really get anything from it. But then you'll get
Yeah.
another set of people that will look at it and be like, it'll invoke some type of emotion with them where they either think about something from their past or something that they've dealt with. And it's just like, oh, this painting is drawing that out. And then you get another certain set of people that will just look at it and be like, oh man, I think they're trying to depict this particular thing when it comes to this particular topic, da 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 da. And so that's how a lot of shows are written as an art factor, where a lot of times they either try to convey one message and hit you over the head with that and be like, hey, this is what we're trying to convey, or leave it open ended for your own interpretation for you to be able to decide.
Exactly. And you make creative choices as host and in other ways in your life, and same thing as me. And sometimes it is open ended. And you bring up art, which I try to be an appreciator of art. I don't consider myself like that knowledgeable about it yet, but I
Mm-hmm.
try to be an appreciator of it. But what you described is exactly why people tend to hate pure paintings that are just white paint on canvas. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it's doing. Like the artist has made a choice for you to look into this and just decide what you want to see into it. And then some people look at it and just go like, well, I could have done that. Why did they make so much money off of
Yeah.
this? I could,
Yeah.
and da 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 da. They see it. And then some people look at it and be like, I'm confused as to why you're painting here. And some people look at it and be like, I'm imagining possibilities now. Like I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it because I have a few. You've been to my apartment. I have a few bare walls in my apartment, and some people are like, you know, some people on the internet are like, "Oh, it's weird to have bare walls in your apartment." And it's like, okay, well, but for me, it's like I just like looking into the void sometimes because it is open ended to me, and I'm thinking about a bunch of other things in my life, and that might be why this ending is unsettling. Except that it's to your point, it's an episode about race, and leaving
Yes.
race open ended is a
Yes.
hard thing to do. It's
And
not
leaving
exactly like white paint on canvas.
and
So
leaving race as a topic for it to be interpreted from your point of view is
yeah,
dangerous. Very
es-
dangerous.
especially as on our side of the line as black people, we're like, this is not something that's open to point of view from our
Mm-hmm.
perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think it's an opinion based thing. Racism is wrong in every way it
Yes.
pops up from our point of
Yes.
view. So we want the ending, and I think this is where, and I don't understand where Steve gets his points of view from because he lives in rural Maryland and he's talked about that. But I'm like,
I,
somehow
it's
he's
in
been on a journey to get to where he's like, yeah, this is not what people who
it's
would be oppressed want.
truly within this situation that I really want to talk to him to be like how did you get here? Like seriously, like in the area that you live in, and this could be my own lack of knowledge as well of the area that he lives
Right.
in. But to my knowledge, it is like strongly predominantly white, and there's like a small amount of other cultures within this area. So like how how do you think the way that you think? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I
He
truly do want to know that, like, and get to like fully know him if there's ever opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, maybe we'll find a way to do it as we grow audience and things like that. But yeah, it's a great. I just wish they hadn't left it open ended, and
Yes,
I would love to
yes.
know how he picked up on that as well, since I don't know him or his network. So
Yes.
I'm just echoing what you're saying.
Well, we like I said, we will also be remiss to not point out the other episode that you pointed out within the Next Generation, namely Code of Honor, season one, episode four, which is just a.
It was the fourth episode.
It was the fourth episode, season one, episode four.
Whew, the
Where
'80s were wild.
you also have to
How did that?
remember. You also have to remember canonically the intro episode was a two-parter, so that was episode one and two.
Okay, got you, got you.
So like
And then
now when you
the
watch it on right
when we do
now
our
when you watch it
promiscuity
on like
episode.
Paramount, like it's considered all one episode, but that was really episode one and two.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
Well,
you have the
actually,
the other episode that you were just discussing.
when we do our promiscuity episode, we're gonna be talking about that episode
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
No, I honestly, it wasn't even that I thought about it being the fourth episode. Being on, I didn't think this episode was in the first season.
It was in the first season. It was.
Man, I'm trying to
Yeah.
think where in my mind you've actually challenged me to think where in my mind did I think the most racist episode of Star Trek was supposed to be in the run of TNG, and for some reason it being in the fourth episode has rocked me. I don't know where it's supposed to fit in my mind, but yeah.
I don't know what the writers were thinking when they created this episode. Like I've tried to really sit down and like put myself in the minds of the writers when they were putting this episode together. And and granted, like as a black man, I probably have some blind spots there that stops me from even figuring this out. But I don't understand why this even became an episode. Number one, it was shot. Number two, and then it was aired. Number three.
Yeah, and that's back when Gene,
Gene was
you
still
know,
alive.
yeah, we're under the first name basis with the late great Gene Roddenberry. Well, I guess at least the late, because he didn't always have the best things. But anywho,
I mean, with him creating this particular like series, I would call him the great. In that, even though he wasn't exactly a perfect person, no one's perfect
yeah,
though.
which is what we were saying when we went on the last tangent that you don't have to be perfect. But yeah, I don't know how he made episodes in the '60s that were so on point, and then this
And then
episode
this.
it's not even like congruous with like the conversation of like race relations getting better and things getting more systemic, so you have to be a little bit more careful about where things, like this episode is just like effed up, like
It is.
like
And
it's not even a good episode because it makes no sense.
And I'll be remiss to
So
not point out, like, for those that don't know, if you are a fan of Star Trek, you understand exactly the episode we're talking about. But those that don't know, the Code of Honor was the episode where the Enterprise travels to planet Legion 2 to obtain a vaccine needed to cure a plague on another world. And the planet Legion 2 was a planet fully
was what?
it was fully black people. Like, I mean, there's no other way
Well,
for me to put
but
it.
But what type of black people exactly?
uh, uh,
Was it full of the Huxtables?
no, no, they were dark, dark
Were
skinned
there,
black people, like
were there was it full
African
of
fully.
Obamas?
It, oh, okay, all right. All right, this is the time where I do need to I need to do this. So everyone who's watched the other episodes up to this point know that I love to um, put into the "There Are Four Lights" scene that Picard did in the Next Generation. I like to like just like shoehorn that in. So I really thought about that over time, and I was just like, that could become pretty like to the point where it's just like, oh, here he go again. So I wanted to use that in a way to where we can like uh, have a segment in our episodes that discuss a certain thing. And how I pointed this out to Patrick was basically to have a situation where we've like researched the topic that we're discussing. And then within that research, we stumbled upon a certain particular item within that research that pisses us off to the point that it almost broke us. Which is the same situation that Picard dealt with within that episode where he was almost broken. There were the guy wanted him the Cardassian wanted him to say there were five lights, but there were really only four. So he almost broke in that area. So I thought of this as a better way of using this in every episode, and I would be remiss to not do that right now.
Oh yeah, hey, this is.
Four lights!
I hope I got
Whenever
out of the way of it.
whenever you hear that, whenever you we get to this point within our episodes, this is a time where one of us is going to go on a tangent where when we research this topic, this particular thing almost broke us. And this particular time, it's me. Patrick, did you want to say something before I started?
I think it's also me. I don't think you're going to be alone in this, but your show, you need to take the first crack at this because, man, what the? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I need to point this out. Uh Everyone knows that I am a black man within America. So there are a lot of stereotypes about black people that is harmful to our community. And the crazy thing is, as I've become a older gentleman, I've learned more and more situations of things that are depicted of us within television, movies, uh, through the news, online, so on and so forth, that are harmful to our community. But
Mm-hmm.
even as a young boy, I want to say I was probably what, 7 or 8 when I first watched this episode.
Because this
Even
aired for the first time when we were 3,
yes,
so it was
yes,
back in syndication when we were really young.
and even when I watched that at that very young age, I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Oh wow!
No,
Is that our first F bomb?
yeah, I'm using the cuss words right now. I'm sorry. We are 2 hours into this episode. I'm pretty sure the bots of YouTube probably won't even flag this, but I am using this right now. I was like, "What the actual f?" Like seriously. So for those that don't know, this civilization was a all black planet of like all black people, and the head of the community, how they pretty much got into power is that the women control the actual land and fortune. So if that male just so happened to marry a female that had a lot of land and fortune, they went up in the hierarchy. So the king for the society just so happened to marry the woman who had the highest level of that. So he was the king and controlled the world, that world, essentially. But he decides that he wants to throw all that away to have Tasha Yar, who is a white woman, be his concubine. And of course, the queen was like, what the hell? And was not happy about that. So within their society, it dictates that when something like that occurs, there's a battle to the death to determine the outcome. And if the queen just so happened to pass away during this battle, then he still maintains all the rights and everything that he obtained from marrying her. So, which was his thought process, like, oh, I can get Tasha Yar, but also keep the land, the money, and the notoriety, and to maintain my being a king this whole time. And but the other crazy thing with this, Tasha didn't want him. It was maddening that he was like pursuing this girl that wasn't even his wife, that wasn't even going to better his society, but she didn't even want him. It was so maddening to watch. It was, this episode almost broke me as a child.
And you're bringing up details that I remember as well, because I'm joining you in this Four Lights. The first Four Lights segment is going to be joint. Troy actually calls Tasha out at some point, being like, "Oh, you weren't attracted to him?" And she's like, "Yeah, I was attracted." Wait, I was attracted, but I'm not trying to like fight to the death.
Yeah,
for this dude. it's like whatever. I wanted to smash Troy. Why did you make me say that? Out in front of everybody. And there's an insidiousness to this episode, and I just pulled up the Wikipedia, so
okay.
Don't at me if this isn't a correct quote, but they have Larry Nemechek cited as it. So, and they said that the theme of the episode was described as having a 1940s tribal Africa theme to it. Like, that's what they were going for with the black people in this episode. And I remember distinctly there being a scene where Picard's trying to get them to give up the game, right? Why did you kidnap Yar without, all this? And why are you, like, playing the vaccine? And Picard comes in and, like, is like, oh, you're a very smart and powerful man. You couldn't have fooled us quite like you have fooled us. And then he like says a little bit too much, and then his bodyguard says way too much. And it's like, it has that whole theme of just being like, oh yeah, if you can just like, I'm gonna say it this way, make the N-words feel good. You ain't got to work too hard to fool them. Like, that's what it came off as when I was a boy watching this episode. And when I was a man watching this episode, like, I only got madder.
It was even more infuriating as a man watching this episode. I skipped this episode on all my rewatches of The Next Generation. I do not watch this episode.
Yeah. It is. I think we were saying before the show, one of the, either Jonathan Frakes or Patrick Stewart was like, "This is the most racist thing I've ever been a part of." And they are correct, because one thing you miss about racism is that there's a paternalism within racism that I didn't even realize until I went to the Center for Human and Civil Rights down here. And you will see people from the 60s talking about And it gets echoed today by certain governors of states, maybe called Florida, where they're like, oh, we did them a favor because they were just
Mm-hmm.
savage and barbaric and couldn't
Mm-hmm.
govern themselves and were just animalistic out there. And once we got a hold of them and taught them our Christianity, our version of Christianity, and our etiquette and our ways, then they really started to really be along their ways.
Mm-hmm.
And this episode plays right into all of that because they're uncivilized. They're barbaric. They're fighting to the death. They're da 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 da. They're stealing our white women. Like it, all of that is in there, and like Picard essentially civilized them,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
like, wow, this
Yeah.
is an incredibly unchallenged racist episode of Star Trek. And I am with you. I'm like, I don't know how it happened outside of the fact that it happened in 1987. Like, I can't explain it.
And the crazy thing with this is that you have people that always says like we're so far removed from slavery, we're so far removed from Jim Crow, we're so far removed from when racism was a thing. Uh, so why are you even talking about this? Why is this even a thing? Like y'all should be grateful like with where we're at as a society, and you have situations like this. Our favorite television series has an episode that is damaging, damaging to how black people are portrayed. And to even allow an episode like this to even be aired is it's terrible. It's absurd. It's like I don't understand why this was something that was even allowed. You have the actors to this day that will state that uh, that was probably the worst episode that they've ever been a part of in any series that they've ever taped.
Yeah, and it shows how like messed up like Hollywood is because you got the black people who are playing the space 1940s tribal
Mm-hmm.
Africans at this
Mm-hmm.
point. You got Michael Dorn on this series, and you got LeVar Burton, who
Mm-hmm.
at this point in the show is the most famous person
Yeah.
on this show
Yeah.
because he was Kunta Kinte
Kunta
on
Kinte and the
Roots
Roots. Mm-hmm. And Reading
and
Rainbow.
and
Like,
Reading Rainbow, and somehow this still happened. That's
mm-hmm.
how powerful systemic racism can be.
and
like,
and I'll
like,
go further with this, Patrick. Even to this day, there are certain episodes that's aired in controversial shows. I'll use South Park as a good example of this, where they did something that like was bugging the trend of something that they could or could not do. So those episodes have been like you can't see them through the streaming networks, through any streaming
mm-hmm.
networks. It's even hard to even find just online period through YouTube or any other source. Like you actually will have to go and get the that season's Blu-ray just to even watch that particular episode. Like you cannot watch this episode. In Star Trek for this particular episode, you can still watch that episode this day. They did not remove it. It is still there.
Yeah,
It's mind boggling as a black person to see like that this is something that they allowed to still be there. I would not have been upset with them. It was like this episode's wrong. We shouldn't even be airing this episode. We have decided to take this episode out of syndication forever. I
yeah.
wouldn't be mad at that.
Which I wouldn't be mad at it, but also there's a part of me that talking about it right now, and maybe it's because of some of the drinks we've had along the way, but talking about it right now, I'm kind of glad that if there are any bigots that have landed on this chat, you can go watch this episode and see exactly what we see right now. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to struggle to go find it. It is straight up on Paramount. Get you that free trial if you don't already have it, and you will see exactly what we see. So I am with you. I think this one needs to be buried under the rug as well. But there's a part of me that's kind of happy. That's like, oh, you think we're overreacting? Go watch it.
Go watch it.
You don't have to struggle to find it.
Yeah, I'll agree with you with that. There is a part of me that would just be like, oh, you didn't think that Star Trek missed the mark? Okay, here's the episode. Go watch it. Go come back to me and tell me where that episode like did not miss the mark. Please, I want you to.
Because the funny thing is, and I know we're on full tilt, me and you, four lights segment right now, and they won't always be joint segments, but this one is. If you take away the racism and switched out the planet for different races, it's still a nonsensical episode.
It's still horrible. I couldn't think of any race that they could put in there, even if it was another white race, and be like, oh, this
Even
is
if it was
a
the
depiction of Viking society back in the day.
yeah Vikings, yeah.
Like even if it's still there, it's like, dude, what the hell?
It's like, wait a minute. These people have the thing that we can't make?
Yeah, yeah.
It's never explained in the episode how they have a vaccine that they don't even like go like, oh, well, no other planet had to deal with this, and so they were forced to invent it, and that's why we don't know how to. Like, they never explain it. They're just like,
They
yeah,
did.
random 1940s tribal Africans in space have this highly sophisticated vaccine that they made.
They didn't even depict, Patrick, how technologically advanced they were.
No,
They
not
didn't
even
even
close.
fully depict. Everything was all tribalistic. Everything was all like how things would be looked at if they were medieval Africans. Like they
Yeah,
never fully showed their technological advances and like really harped on like this is why they were able to create this vaccine that no one in the Federation could create.
yeah. This is the Wakanda that the KKK would invent.
Yes.
like,
Yes.
like just randomly having technology that you couldn't have made, and it was clearly there on accident, and probably somebody white left it there. It's like what it feels like watching this, and I know I'm commenting on my own rant now, but we're in the four light segment. Um, I'm a big proponent of rehabilitating African history and African culture because the way it's taught to us here in the United States, and I assume in other Western nations that are majority white, is that white people just showed up to Africa, took over, and that's why you can have all this stuff that's stolen, put into the British Museum, and things like that. We do not get taught, and even I myself saying this, no, I need to do more research, how politically complex, how inventive the African continent was. And I feel like we're going to learn it at some point because Africa is one of the only places in the world, if not the only place in the world, going through a population boom right now. So in about 20 years, Africa is going to be an economic powerhouse. So I think we're going to learn it at some point. But
But
right now, in the way that people talk about world history, it's like Africa is just a place where it's like, oh well, it was savagery, and we just took over, and yeah, we had guns, and they
yeah.
had no way to fight back, and all that stuff. And as long as they can assert that paternalism and infantilize Africa, then it hurts us as African Americans because we're not as cultured as the Vatican and Europe and Buckingham Palace and all this stuff. And it's like probably because all that stuff happened to us thousands of years before, hundreds
And,
of years before all that happened to you. So
but that's why the first Black Panther movie was such a big deal for not only
yeah,
the black people in America, but also anyone who was of African American descent or African descent, I should say. Like you looked at that and you were just like finally we're being portrayed in a light to where we have our own um, society, we have our own rituals, we have our own um, endearments towards one another. But also at the same
Yeah.
time, like, yeah, we have some tribalistic things that like were carried over from well beyond when we were even alive. But you can still see that this was a civilization that was
Yeah.
highly technological and created a lot of technology that none of the other world really had. And granted, like, yeah,
Hmm.
part of that was because of vibranium, but still, like, it still showed that, like even though like vibranium was a thing, it still required people to understand it and learn how to apply it to make it more to make it more helpful for this society.
And to
And
have social sciences and culture
yes,
around it. Like, yeah,
yes.
a
So
political system. Yeah.
and that's why Black Panther will always be in the hearts of a lot of black people. That like finally something that portrays us in this light that we as a society of all black people could show a society where it's peaceful, where it's
Yeah.
technological, where we're better than a lot of the other nations in certain ways. Like, yeah, there'll probably be other areas within other nations that they do things better than we do, but there are certain things that they did that was better than other societies. So, and that's the thing. Like, not every society is going to have it right, but if all of us came together, like, show what we do that's better and the things that we fall upon that we're not as great as, and so on and so forth, we could help make the world itself so much better than what it currently is.
Agreed. Agreed. And we don't even need to go to fictional Africa to have that. Like, that is like
Mm-hmm.
actual factual Africa right now. Even the way probably people are thinking about Africa and like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
or where would I go and what hotels would I go to? Like, they got a lot of nice stuff
They
in
do.
Africa, and it's not just in South Africa where the white people are. Like, Nigeria
Yeah.
and Egypt and all these places have like really nice stuff, and yet and still to this day, if you mention Africa, I bet most people conjure up this image of
A
code
place
of
that's
honor, these
mm-hmm.
tribal, rural,
Tribal,
cut off
rural,
folks that, yeah, don't know, like
dirt
being here in the United
roads.
States, yeah, which we have in the United States. We got country
Mm-hmm.
here
Mm-hmm. We have
that looks
rural,
cut
a
off.
lot of rural areas in America.
Yeah, yeah, but like that's what they'll think of with Africa. They won't think of any of the advancements or anything like that, and make us fight for our cultural legacy. But when you think of Europe, and I know, and I because I feel it in my brain right now when I'm talking about it. When I think of Europe, I'm like, oh, I'll just go to Buckingham Palace or go to Versailles. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing that you conjure up when you think of that there. But it's like, hey, Africa's got the same thing. We just don't talk about it, and we don't talk about it because we gave them that recognition, political complexity, intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and technological advancement, then you might have to be like, oh, black people are probably on the same level as we are, because it's not like they just came from savagery, which we didn't.
And okay, and that's the four light segment. This is an area. It when we looked at it
Perfect
again,
first
it
four
just
light segment, by the
oh,
way.
it broke us. It actually is the perfect four light segment.
We
I
may
would agree
never get
with you on that.
that pissed off about.
It will probably not be that long. I think I just timed it, and it was like 20 minutes long of that four lights
Yeah, we'll have
rant.
to shorten it up.
That's gonna be great when I go to edit it. So,
This is going to be a two-parter when you edit it. I don't think you're going to be able to.
well, and I'm glad you said that because even with racism in Star Trek, there are other episodes that we are not going to get over touch. We could spend 8 hours or longer talking about
Hmm.
this one particular topic. And I'm sure we are going to discuss this again later on other episodes and
Are you
probably
about
on
to
a part
conclude
two.
us?
Yes,
Can,
yes, because
can we
we're
please can we please just spend like 2 minutes talking about the DS9 ones? Just thematically. I
just
just don't want to
about.
leave the episode.
I feel you on
No, no,
that.
no. I get it. I get it. Because you're right.
I
The
feel you on that.
DS9 racism episodes can be their own thing, but I don't. I think we're gonna deprive ourselves if we don't just say, "Far beyond the stars, take me out to the hollow suite, bada bing, bada bang," are
They're
bars about like
hmm
how the legacy of racism can even extend into the future, where a Starfleet captain that is black
hmm
knows about these things and is thinking about these things even as he's working. So that's all I wanted to say. I just feel like we had to say it
I agree with
before
you.
you concluded us,
No,
but
no, I agree with you. And Far Beyond the Stars being one of the stronger of the three episodes that is very notable within Star Trek pantheon of discussing racism and how that looks. And I mean, this goes back to what we said at the beginning as to how we don't understand how there are certain a segment of the fan base that feels like that Star Trek didn't blatantly throw these
didn't
topics
used to be
in your
woke.
face. Where this whole episode and Far Beyond the Stars, where Captain Cisco was like going experiencing those visions where he was in the 1950s and he was a science fiction writer, and how they oppressed him and wanted to depict him being him having characters that were racially different, and not only that, having the commanding officer be black, and how they touched on that, which was it was so great because it correlated with a topic that was being discussed then of having a black captain be the head of a Star Trek series. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a chef's kiss to this whole rendition of how black people are even looked at within our society. And I agree with you, Patrick. It would be I would be remiss to not even point that out. And this is something we can go into further detail on in a future episode when discussing
Yeah,
racism in Star Trek.
but we did a lot of good work here. But I'm glad you agreed. I was like, we have to say something. But yeah, we'll dive into it at some point when we feel like doing this again. I guess maybe next Juneteenth,
Maybe next
maybe
year.
next February. Yeah.
But like we are already pretty long into this episode. I don't want it to extend it even more than what it currently is. We're trying to be better at not having these episodes be long and to the point where you will probably want to click off of it. So we're doing better at this. And even when I go to edit these episodes, I'm trying to get them down well within to a format where it feels like you can really like absorb what we're saying, but not miss some of the things that we discuss within them. So I try not to like chop it too hard, but sometimes you have to within on the editing stage. So anything you wanted to say before we end this episode, Patrick?
No, no. I think my jump in on DS9 was the last thing
And,
that I wanted.
and once again, like we said at the beginning, we only picked on like show found like two main episodes that New Track even discuss. And like I said, I would be remiss to not point out that um, Star Trek Picard season one fully like discussed like bigotry when it came to the android race that was created. Um, but for the most part, there are a lot of episodes in older Star Trek that really hit on racism, bigotry, ped, uh, why do I Why did I?
Prejudice.
Yeah, prejudice. This like I don't know why I stumbled on that word right now. Like it showed a lot of that, and to even say that newer Star Trek hits you over the head with that more than older Star Trek shows me, at least to me, in my point of view and how I feel, you didn't really watch Star Trek the way that I did. And I'm pretty sure Patrick would
Agreed.
agree with you.
Agreed. We don't know
So,
what you're watching, and we don't know why you're still here.
don't know why you're still a fan. Don't know. But we're going to end it here on this strong episode talking about racism in Star Trek. Next week, well, no, we're going to take a week off because next week is 4th of July. And a lot of us is going to be out of town and we won't be able to really do this episode. But I believe our good friend Kumla, who helps us in the court episodes, wants to join us on this
Cool.
next episode. So we're going to discuss well, I'm
You
sorry.
betrayed your uniform.
Uniforms. Which uniform is the best in Star Trek? Excuse me. Thank you for that, Patrick. I had a brain fart there.
No problem.
So we know that this particular topic was very heavy. So we want to go back to some a lighthearted topic, and we decided that uniforms, like discussing which one was the best and why it is, and then like even uniforms that missed the mark. We thought that would be a good episode to like joke about and like have a lot of good banter in. So that will be the next episode. That will occur in 2 weeks, not one, 2 weeks, because next week we won't be filming. So anything you want to say, Patrick, before we end with the wonderful quote?
Nah, I think I'm good.
All right. So, like as always, we're going to end with that wonderful quote from Star Trek Picard.
It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life.
Thank you for joining us today. Like I said, I know this was a heavy headed topic, but I appreciate y'all for listening to us. Join us next time on Strange Check, where we talk about all the crazy, weird things that happen within Star Trek. Have a great week, y'all.